Welcome to It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and early 80s. This is Kara Siegel. So I'd like to welcome in Joy Feldman Bunson to the It's Been How Long podcast studio. Hey, Joy.
Hi, Kara.
Thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast today.
Oh, well, thank you for the invitation. Actually, kind of intrigued by this whole project that you've embarked on.
I am quite intrigued by it as well. It's been a lot of fun catching up with people, and as we just chatted, I mean, it's been decades since we've been in touch.
Decades.
So yeah,
Yes.
that's a long time.
Hard to
So
imagine that we could talk about like having known each other many decades ago, right?
I know,
It seems almost surreal.
I know. Well, I mean, so we both went to Heritage.
No, I
Right?
didn't. Actually,
Oh,
my mother was a guidance counselor at Heritage.
okay. All
I
right.
went to Harry B. Kelman Academy at
Oh,
Bethel Synagogue,
yeah.
eighth
Okay.
grade,
All right. So then you joined up in
high school.
ninth grade.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, so we've known each other then 44 plus 4. So
Mm. Right.
that's approaching
Exactly.
5 decades. Yeah. Uh, so what are you up to these days? What keeps you busy?
So I am let's see, I have I'm lucky enough to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that type of arrangement. I work part-time doing consulting in a whole host of human resources related topics, particularly focusing on things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to leadership, to culture. And I have been doing that kind of work for decades also. I am involved in several not-for-profit organizations. I actually co-chaired the board of a small not-for-profit Athlete Ally for 6 years and just stopped that. My term ended, stop that. My term ended at the end of December. So I'm now just a board member at large, which is an entirely different set of responsibilities and thankfully a lot less. And Athlete Ally is a social justice organization whose mission is ending homophobia and transphobia in sports. And
Oh,
in
what a great job.
well,
Yeah.
it's a great organization.
Yeah.
Um, and in the last several years, is suddenly trans inclusion in sports has become like on the legislative agenda in so many states
Yeah.
and in the media. It went from being something that hardly anybody ever talked about to something everyone has an opinion on. So that's actually been an interesting challenge. Um, I also am on the board of Atlantic Theater Company, which is a not-for-profit theater in New York City, which is just totally fun. Um, I've been on the I'm also on the board of the American Friends of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, which is an orchestra in London that has a group of very interested advocates here in the States. So
Hmm.
that's fun. We're going to London in a few weeks for their gala. Um, and I was on the board of the Retreat, which is a domestic violence organization in Long Island, where we also have a house. I was on that board for 10 years and also on the board of the Women's Refugee Commission, which does advocacy and policy making work around obviously refugees, particularly women and children, for 6 years. So those are the kinds of things I've been doing.
Wow.
Prior to all that, I worked for 20 years for JP Morgan Chase. Um, and I have, most importantly, one son, Daniel, uh, who is now 25, about to be 26 in a few weeks.
Well, that's great. How do you enjoy spending your time? I mean, obviously, you wouldn't be doing these things if you didn't enjoy them, but sort of avocations.
Okay, so my avocations are
Are you a pickleball player down there in Florida?
I've taken pickleball lessons. I have to say that do you play pickleball?
I dabble. You remember I played a lot of tennis.
Yes.
So, yes, I have converted over, but I dabble.
Well, I would say that I like taking pickleball lessons because there's this really lovely young man who plays on the Argentinian tennis team during the winter, during their summer, and who comes here now to teach pickleball. but I can't say I've actually mastered the rules.
Okay. Stay out of the kitchen. That's all I know.
Yeah, basically, like I got that part, stay out of the kitchen, but some of the other ones confound me a bit. What do? I do, in addition to like all the things I talked about, the thing I love the most is going to theater, which
Oh,
I
great.
primarily do in New York City,
Hmm.
uh, and a little bit here in Miami, which is obviously where I am right this second. Um, so that's my biggest passion is going to the theater.
That's great.
Sometimes with my husband Steve, often with friends, sometimes with Daniel, my son. And I mean, I think I do a bunch of other kinds of things. I like to read. I like to, I spend a lot of time with my friends. Been very lucky to have worked in New York for a very long time. So we have a, very engaged group of friends of all kinds. I like art a lot of opportunities, both in New York and Miami, to meet artists and to spend time with them and to learn more about like what drives them. I'm learn about interesting profit projects, sorry, that sort of span the arts and social justice. So
Oh,
those are the kinds of things that I do.
that's great. That's great. Did you belong to any clubs or teams back in high school?
Who could remember now? Um, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that there was a time when I wrote for the yearbook.
Okay.
Um, I definitely was never on any sports related team. Um, I don't think I did. I don't think I participated in a lot of clubs actually.
Okay.
You were in the band, right?
What's that?
Were you in the band?
Yes, I was in the band
But
for a while.
I all of a sudden had like this flash of memory of you being in the marching band.
For a year or two. And played some sports as well. So did you ever have a jog back in high school?
Oh, I did. Um, I actually, well, I guess when you were asking about avocations,
Yeah.
so if you were to interview my husband, he would probably put shopping at the top of the list.
Okay.
So I would say I had an underfunded passion for shopping when I was in high school, and therefore worked as much as I could um, to get resources to spend every weekend at the Echelon or Cherry Hill Mall. Um, so I did lots and lots of babysitting.
Okay.
And then and it was mother's helper. I taught Hebrew school at a synagogue in wasn't in Morristown, but it was like the next town over further away. So it was a
Mhm.
relatively, I was only like 17 years old. So it did, so none of the local, none of the really local synagogues wanted to hire me, but so this one was very small and far away. So I did that. I tutored bar and bat mitzvah lessons and also worked at K Jewelers in the Echelon Mall.
Oh wow. Okay. That's cool. So what did you do after graduation?
Oh, after graduation, I went to college. Um, I went to Cornell, where I majored in American Studies, which is basically American history and American literature. And at the time, it was a pretty unformed major. So any class that you felt like taking that had an American in the title, you could take, and that would count. Um, let's see, Jerry Soam Bender was in our class in high
Yeah.
school and
Yeah.
actually and went to Cornell
Yeah.
also. And
So
Sharon
did
Linden,
Lauren Jaffe.
right? Lauren Jaffe, Sharon Linden.
Yep.
Um, so I wasn't alone there.
Yeah.
And I spent I also, let's say I taught Hebrew school there.
Hmm.
There, there I didn't have to go very far. There was actually a synagogue in town that felt I was qualified enough to teach. Um, and I did a lot of volunteer work for what was sort of the crisis counseling
Hmm.
um, organization on campus. And I studied somewhat.
Somewhat. And
Yeah.
when you left Cornell?
Um, when I left Cornell, so during the time that I was at Cornell, I for summer jobs, I actually I was working for a temp agency and they placed me, and I don't know if this place still exists, but it was the only bluebonnet. It was a Nabisco plant that was in Camden, and
Mm.
it was I think it was in Camden. It wasn't in Camden. It was somewhere near Camden. Um, and they made all the bluebonnet and Fleischmann's margarine on the
Oh,
East
wow.
Coast, that was distributed on the East Coast.
Wow.
And I had this really fun. I was like the super temp. So I got to like substitute for any clerical staff or administrative staff who happened to be on vacation for the summer, which was so fun. And during that time, I spent a fair amount of time working with the human resources manager, who was actually the person called personnel back then,
Hmm.
um, because his assistant must have gotten an ungodly amount of time off because I spent weeks working with them. And I did that for a couple of summers, and I really, really liked what seemed to be a career in human resources. And fortunately, because I was at Cornell, I got to take lots of classes in the labor relations school and the hotel school that were about human resources management. So by the time I graduated, I thought, oh, this might be a fun career path. And then my now husband, Steve, whom I'd met when we were at Cornell, was going to work in New York City. And I thought, oh, New York City sounds really fun. I'll apply to graduate school in New York City. Why not just go to graduate school? And I did. So I went to NYU and I got a master's degree in organizational psychology. I married Steve. We've been married since August 1985. So a very, very, very long time.
Yep.
And New York City's been our primary residence ever since 1984, when he graduated from business school and I graduated from college.
Wow. So you're currently you're currently in Miami.
I'm currently right this second in Miami. And our primary residence is Manhattan.
Okay. All right. And so you mentioned London, so you've had the opportunity to do some travel. Do you have a favorite spot that you've traveled to or always like to travel back to over the years, or recommendation for anybody who might be broaching retirement and might want to look for places to travel to?
um, I don't know. I think I've been very lucky and have had the chance to go to many, many places all over the world. And I like or love different ones for different reasons. Um, I mean, we took a trip to Patagonia several years ago, and that was really, have you been to Patagonia?
I have not.
Literally, you are at the end of the earth, like
Hmm.
full stop, end of the earth. And you can feel it there. So like that's just it's an unbelievable experience. And I've been to South America and Central America several times. The Galapagos, have you been there?
I have been there. I did a liveaboard
Oh,
for a week with the blue-footed boobies and the everything that was there. It was
everything.
amazing. Yeah, it's
And
a lot of stuff.
the sea lions that are,
Yep. Yeah,
and that's just amazing, right?
yeah, it was incredible. Yeah,
So I thought the Galapagos was a great trip. We went on a safari to Tanzania. That was also spectacular.
that's
And then,
amazing.
I don't know, I think that there are less, maybe better traveled places that, even though everybody goes to them, I think are still pretty spectacular.
Yeah,
Whether it's London or Paris, Madrid. I love Madrid. Our son Daniel studied in Madrid for a semester, and we have very good friends who live there, so we've been there a lot. And that's just a really fantastic city. So I think it depends on what you want. If you want arts and culture, if you want outdoors.
yeah.
We actually went to Iceland twice,
Oh,
and that was really amazing. So beautiful. Have you been there?
have not, have not.
Uh, I
Yep.
highly recommend Iceland, and
Cool.
recommend not staying in Reykjavik the whole time, because
Okay.
a lot of people just end up staying there and taking day trips from there. But really, the first time Steve and I went, we we went on this. It was a very long time ago. It was before regular people went to Iceland all the time.
Hmm.
And we went on this bus tour that Iceland Air sponsored that went all the way throughout the entire country, and we really got a chance to see and experience things the way maybe more local people live, because at the
Oh,
time,
that's great.
oh, it was great.
Yeah,
Like there are not a lot of Reykjavik is the place that people who say they've been to Iceland like usually go to,
yeah,
and that's actually like it's a city,
yeah. Okay.
hotels, and it's got restaurants.
Yeah.
Outside of that, not so much. So
Okay.
it, or at least in some of the far corners of Iceland. So it's really good to get the contrast.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. So, was there a class or a teacher at East that influenced you beyond your high school days?
Good question. And I don't really know. I think maybe there were a number of influences that I had. Um, I think certainly Miss Mignona and um her folk and English. I always love the English language, right? Like what was his name? Dr.
Was it Obriza?
Yes. I was like I had Dr. Fabrice stuck in my head. I'm like, no, his name was not Fabrice. His name was something with yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Fabriza.
Hmm. So you enjoyed those classes.
Yes.
Did you have a high school sweetheart?
I did not. I wanted one, but I never got one.
But you have a sweetheart for many, many years. Do you have is there an interesting story behind how you met Steve?
There is kind of, I guess. So if we go backwards in time to Cornell, um, at the time that we would have been in college, Cornell had very, very little on-campus housing for students beyond their freshman year. So most people, not all people, but most people ended up living off campus in some way. And my senior year, my roommates and I lived in this old house at the edge of campus that had been converted into apartments. And we lived in the attic. And literally it was the attic of this old house, you know, with high ceilings and sort of damp, and the house kind of looked like a haunted house, to be honest. So you have to like get that image in your head. And Steve and his roommate lived in the apartment underneath us and controlled the heat. So here we are. We live in the we live in the attic, which is
Uninsulated.
exactly uninsulated, drafty, breezy with super high ceilings. And he and his roommate live on the floor below us, literally right underneath us, in this little teensy apartment it's got two bedrooms. In between the two bedrooms is a kitchen and a bathroom. Like they don't even have a living room. That's how small their apartment is. And they have the thermostat. So when if they turn the heat up, they would be boiling
Yeah.
because it was so small. Um, but my roommates and I were constantly down in their apartment begging them to turn the heat up. And I would, and because their apartment ended up being so hot, Steve would often Steve's room and his door like face the shared hallway. And because I lived in the attic, I had to like climb up all the steps. So
Yeah.
I walk right by his apartment. Because it was so hot, he would often keep his door open. So he would watch me like go upstairs. Um, and of course, half the time he was sound asleep with a book on his chest. Because again, his entire apartment is just as bad. Um, so that's how we met.
That's a great story. So do you have any friends from East you're still in touch with? Either through
Um,
Facebook or just still in
I
touch
mean,
with?
I definitely have people that I, you know, have sort of from afar spent time with on Facebook, but
Hmm.
not actually really talked to in a long time. Um, I did, however, have lunch with Jerry Sohm Bender
Yeah.
about 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow.
Um,
Where's Jerry?
Jerry is actually she's in the DC area.
Okay.
She had moved to California and then moved back to the Northeast. Her daughter's going to school at NYU Business School,
No.
and her daughter is one of her children is exact her youngest is the exact same age as my son Daniel,
Oh,
like
okay.
in 2 weeks of each other. So we all had lunch to introduce each other a few weeks ago. So she's probably the person I've seen most recently.
Oh, that's great. Jerry was in the band, right? She a
Yeah,
violin?
she was
Yeah,
a cellist.
cellist. Okay. Wow. Anyone you were tight with that you just totally lost track of that you're wondering about?
Um, I think so many of the people that I actually like do keep up with them a little bit on Facebook,
Yeah.
and or my mother is friends with them, with their
Hmm.
mothers. Um, so I think I'm pretty good
Yeah.
because my mother who really wishes I kept in touch with everybody will frequently like call me and say, I just talked to so and so's mom. How many years has it been since you've talked to them? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. That's funny. Do you have any standout memories from high school, an event or an activity with a friend, in school or out?
Let's see, the things that I remember most vividly are going back to my shopping, spending not only lots of weekends at the mall, both working and at K Jewelers and shopping, um, but also going to Philadelphia a lot on the high speed line,
Oh,
and just like going to all those places that don't exist anymore, like the marketplace and Strawbridges
oh yeah.
and like
Wow.
all honor makers, like all those stores that were staples of our childhood, but
Oh yeah.
have gone by the wayside. Um, so I have lots of memories of that. In terms of in school, um, I have lots of memories of like classes and you know the hallways and what a nice collegiate. I thought it was like a really nice place.
Hmm.
So, and I felt like I was lucky to have lots of friends there. So I'm just like thinking, what's coming to mind? Uh, I spent a lot of time apparently at Ponzio's, having like French fries with brown gravy.
Yeah.
It's a very distinct memory of mine. Um, Mr. Kim's QPS class,
Oh yeah.
which confounded me no end. Like I was totally incapable of doing anything in it,
You,
but I
you
still
didn't
managed.
learn to use the slide rule?
Yeah. And I use it all the time now. It's
Yeah.
it's a staple of it's been a staple of my existence. So um I'm trying to think about any. Oh, I actually was Mr. Nathan's, right? The theater. Mr.
Yeah. Robert Nation. Robert Nation.
Nation, right.
Yeah.
Mr. Nation's theater class. Um and going to lots and lots of productions.
Yeah. Yeah. We had some really good productions. Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Godspell, do you remember that one?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That was amazing. Anything you wish classmates knew about you back then or now?
Did I have a hard time remembering names? Um,
And it's not just you, honey.
I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, no, for sure. Have you been back in the building? And if you did, no, no,
So, Carrie, one thing that you might not remember,
yeah.
or maybe you remember and just like haven't mentioned it, is my mother worked there. Remember that?
Yes, yes, yes. Your mother was a guidance counselor. I do
Yes.
remember.
So our last like couple of, because was she your guidance counselor at Heritage?
She was.
Okay. So she, for my first 2 years, she did not work there, but my last 2 years, she definitely worked there. And that was another complication.
Yes.
I tried to avoid that office a lot.
Yeah.
Um, oh, what else? Driving,
Yes.
like learning how to drive,
Uh,
carpooling to school.
yeah,
Um, that was really fun.
definitely. You've been back to the building since we graduated? No. Mm-mm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever been back to the building, but I might be wrong.
Yeah.
You been back to the building?
Been back to the parking lot because when we
Okay.
would go there in the summer and as my kids came up on their driving year, we would all take them like, this is where I learned to drive, this parking lot. You're going to learn to drive in this parking lot. Still has the same potholes. I've
Uh-huh.
never filled them in. So,
I'm pretty sure that I learned to drive at the Bret Hart
oh,
um parking lot because that was in my little neighborhood,
hmm,
and I could actually easily drive there with one of my parents in the car and then practice.
there you go. So we're back in 1980 and you're
Um,
looking out 40 years. We've just
Mm.
graduated, looking out 40 years down the road. Is this where you thought you'd be?
Sitting on my terrace in Miami? No, not at all. I mean, so I guess that's a literal answer.
Okay.
Uh, I think I think I always believed that I would have a very robust career,
Hmm.
and I have. Um, and I got a chance to do so some of the things that I had imagined might be possible when we were in high school became possible, at least from a professional career and a career standpoint. Um, During my time at JP Morgan Chase in particular, I was lucky enough to have a super high impact job, and you know, it was it was probably what my imagination had been about working. Like I got to put on suits and get dressed up
Yeah.
and high-heeled shoes and go to work and pantyhose and go to work every day, right? Like all of those things I definitely had imagined. Um, I didn't imagine that we would be fortunate enough to live and work in Manhattan and be staring at the ocean right now, from a nice apartment on Miami Beach like that. Those kinds of things were totally beyond my context when we were growing up. So I think that was like a lucky thing. Um, I didn't imagine my dad would get Alzheimer's, which was pretty awful.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry.
I thought maybe I would have more kids, but didn't. So I think some things yes, some things no. I mean, some of the not-for-profit work that I've had the opportunity to do, I didn't even know existed when
Mm.
we were growing up. So I guess it's a little bit of both. Yes, things I saw myself, wished for myself, and some things that just happened.
Yeah.
And I feel lucky.
Yeah. That's great. Did you enjoy high school?
Actually, I did. Did you?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did for sure. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I definitely did. It was
So,
like one big party for me. Um,
so you were hanging out in Sea Wing with everybody. So, best piece
No,
of
because I was a
advice.
little bit of a goody two shoes. I didn't really, I didn't smoke marijuana until we went to college. And Cornell, believe me, that was like, that was a whole big awakening for me.
Yeah.
Like, remember, I told you I was hanging out at Ponzio's eating French fries with brown gravy. I thought that was really decadent. And then I went to Cornell, which is in Ithaca, New York, and there's literally nothing to do except drink and smoke and, you
Yeah.
know,
Party.
yeah, basically, that's it.
So, best piece of advice that you would go back and give your 18-year-old self, or maybe you gave your 18-year-old son.
I think probably it's important to be moving forward, right? And wanting to move forward and with enjoying where you are. Um, and I mean, I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card or anything, but I think that being grateful for every step of the way that you get to, um, recognizing that for most, nothing is perfect, right? And for most of us, every step of the way comes with lots of steps backwards and before you move forwards, but appreciating the forward momentum is really important.
For all of us, not just
Yeah,
18-year-olds.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. So we've reached the point in the podcast which I call the fast and furious finish. So
Wait,
yeah,
should I hold my breath?
there you go. No. Did you have a favorite TV show or a movie or a favorite book from back in high school?
Mm. Well, I read a lot in high school. I'm pretty sure I went to the movies because that was like a thing to do,
Yeah.
like at the mall.
Yeah.
Remember, I was at the mall all the time. So
Yeah.
sometimes I met people at the mall, went to the movies.
There you go.
Um,
Don't remember one that sticks out. I went and Googled so the top movies in 1979. were
Uh-huh.
Superman, Amityville Horror, Rocky 2, or we're already up to Rocky 2. The top movies in 1980 were Empire Strikes Back, Airplane,
Mm.
and 9 to 5.
Well, I definitely saw all of those, but I don't
Yeah,
know that any one of them has
was a
struck
favorite.
me being well,
Okay.
no, I don't even know that I actually related them to that period of my, that we were
Yeah,
actually in high school.
yeah.
Um, I think I was just reading a lot.
Mm.
I had a Heart of Darkness phase, where I read a lot. I read actually everything that Joseph Conrad wrote during that period of time when we were in high school. I also had a First Ladies phase, and I read tons of biographies of of our First Ladies. Um, so I definitely remember being a little bit compulsive, maybe, and just having a topic and going through it, just reading every single thing there was to know about whatever that, or everything by by that specific author.
Mhm.
So
Not
those
a
are the
favorite. Not a specific favorite, though.
No, I
Yeah.
don't have a specific favorite.
How about did you have a favorite musical group or musical artist or genre back?
Um, no, I mean I liked everything pretty much. I mean that I was I'm laughing because I took piano lessons until I was 16
Hmm. I
with
didn't
Reggie
know
Wu.
that.
Oh yes, with Reggie Wu's mother.
Oh, wow. Okay. There's a tie-in. Shout
They
out to
lived
Reggie and his band here. Having
Yes.
the Snitch.
So Reggie lived 2 doors away from me,
Ah,
maybe three
okay.
doors away from me,
Okay.
somewhere between two and one, either 2 or 3 doors away from me. So I spent a lot of time in his house, um, and spent a lot of time spent a lot of time uh, not on pop music, but on the classics.
Hmm.
Because I can't say that I ever became an amazing piano player because I was too lazy to practice enough. But I was good enough that that I played piano till I was 16, at least, with Mrs. Wu, who was
Oh,
fantastic.
oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. So, did you like your yearbook photo and quote?
I
And
can't read the quote.
the quote is, quote, weeping may endure
Oh, for a night,
for a night, but
but
joy
joy comes
comes
in
in
the
the
morning.
morning. Yeah.
Hmm, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. So was that vintage joy and haircut back in the day?
Well, I guess so. The haircut looks a little bit too similar to the one I have right now, though. That's a little, don't you think? It's the same general shape.
Yeah, you're ahead of your
No wrinkles
time.
up.
There you go. All right. So I substituted for the yearbook question. So what language did you take back at East and did you find it useful?
So I took French at East, and
With Madame Petikoff?
with everybody, yes, with Madame Petitcoff. I took French at East, and I also had gone to Harry B. Kelman Academy, as we had discussed, I think, prior to
Hmm.
our conversation here. And so I learned Hebrew and English simultaneously. So at the time that we were in, and I was still going to like Hebrew high school and some special Hebrew high school in Philadelphia. So at the time that we were
Rats.
in, yes, I went to Gratz. Um, so at the time that we were in high school, I was actually fluent in both French and Hebrew, and I retained that all through college.
Oh.
And I found the French extremely useful for the many times that Steve and I went to France. I can't say it was useful in any other sphere of my life. And I have to say that I've been very delinquent in learning Spanish because I do spend a lot of time here in Miami, where Spanish, honestly, is the first language of most, of more than half the population.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's actually who lives in Madrid. She's an American, and her husband is a Spaniard, and they've come to visit. They bought a house near us. But when the first time they came, her husband was marveling. He goes, everybody comes up to me and just immediately starts speaking Spanish. How do they know? I'm like, it's not that they know anything. It's that people immediately start speaking Spanish. And if you don't understand them, you are really like you are the one who are out of place. So
Yeah.
have it on my list of things to learn would be Spanish.
Yeah. Excellent.
Way more useful. What language did you
I
take?
took French and retained nothing other than French fries and brown gravy. So, and then didn't really want to speak a language, so I took Latin in college, which
Mhm.
didn't turn out to be terribly helpful. But now I'm using, apps to learn some Spanish and had the opportunity to go to Italy last year, so I learned some
Oh, Italy
Italian.
is so fantastic, right?
Yeah, so doing that. So apps work, when you eventually retire, maybe you'll pick up Spanish.
I've tried the apps, but I'm not disciplined enough.
uh, I'll just go outside and start talking. So, lastly, anything you want to tell anybody, your parting shot to anybody from school might be listening?
I don't know. Oh, I know what I want to tell people. So during the pandemic, because I was bored, and a couple of friends of mine and I were all bored together, we started this thing that we call Culture Club, where we
Mhm.
were lucky enough because during the pandemic, everybody was home and nobody had a clue what to do about it. Um, we got we got so many cultural institutions of all kinds on Zoom with us to do virtual tours of museums, to do we got the we we got theater companies to do performances for us. We did all kinds of things in the realm of culture, and then we reconstituted Culture Club last year, now that we're back in the physical world, to focus much more on things related to feminism
Mhm.
and in multiple dimensions. So last year we, had a chance to hear from the CEO of Planned Parenthood, and we got to hear from an American cultural historian about the origins of feminism and all of its different components. And we got to tour virtually a couple of different museums, one here in Miami, one in Philadelphia. So anybody who's interested in those kinds of things can let me know, because we're starting to plan for 2024. We'll probably do 4 or 5 sessions starting in March, and always interested in having more people engaged. So
Well, that's great. And so, do they can reach you through Facebook, or is there a website that the Culture Club
now
uses?
it's fairly very like low tech. So
Hmm.
they can really best to reach me via
Facebook,
um
probably, or
no, because I'm so bad at that.
okay,
I would say through my email.
okay. Which is, if you want to give that out.
I'm putting in the chat for you.
Oh, okay. Can I read it out?
Yes.
It's joybunson@gmail.com.
Yeah, look at
So
that.
look at
Very
that.
There's not that many Joy Bunsen, so I don't have to, it didn't have to be like Joy Bunsen 1, 2, 10.
Yeah, great.
Like some people.
Well, Joy, it was just such a joy catching up with you after
Oh,
all these
Karen,
years.
it's so nice to catch up with you and to hear all the things that you've been up to and about your family, and so
Yeah,
excited.
it is. And if you find yourself in North Carolina, uh, give a shout. There's
You have
always
no
a seat at
idea
the
how many
clinic.
times I was in North Carolina. There's so many times when Daniel was at Davidson.
All right. Well,
Well, if you find yourself
enjoy
in New York or Miami, call me.
for sure. We'll do.
Okay.
And
All right.
thank you, and happy 2024.
Thank you. Happy 2024. And I look forward to hearing everybody else's podcasts.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Excellent.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joy.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me on It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and the early 80s. A shout out to my cousin Brad Corbett, whose podcast We Weren't Friends in High School inspired me to do this podcast, and whose advice and encouragement have been so helpful. Thanks also to my husband Randy Cockdale, who read all the fine print on the podcast hosting website so I wouldn't have to. And thanks to Jeff Lyons, content consultant and guinea pig, and to Deborah Smead, also content consultant. And thank you to all our classmates who are listening in. See you next week.